So the colleagues I've got this morning who are working with me on this, we've got Peter Turner, who is leading on the management work under Open Networks. So Peter is leading one of the product teams there, and Peter will present some of the slides. We've got Rashmi Radhakrishnan, who is also part of the queue management team. Rashmi is with National Grid System Operator, and we'll pick up any relevant questions from that side. And we've got Dan Cleland from ENA, who's helping us to drive the webinar this morning. And Dan will keep us right in terms of making sure that the slides are moved on and all the Q&A is picked up. So Dan, could you move us to the next slide, please? Okay, so what we'll do here is I'll do the first 2 or 3 slides, and then I'll pass across to Peter, who will take us through the some of the detail around queue management, and then I will pick up at the end again. This particular webinar and the work that we've been doing to produce the user guide really is building on work that was done under Open Networks during 2019. There was an earlier consultation. So what the user guide has tried to do is to really pick up the high-level points that were agreed and the approach that was agreed under that consultation, and turn them into a user guide with a bit more detail and a bit more substance about how milestones and some of the concepts around milestones will be used by network companies going forward. So it's, by its nature, the user guide and what we're talking about is probably a little bit more detailed than, or will be a little bit more detailed than what we've done before in this. I think as we step through the slides, what we'll do is sort of pick up questions as we go. So we'll probably, with Dan's help, just do a quick check. We have, I think, about 10 or 11 slides to step through, and we'll do a quick check at the end of each slide as to whether any questions are there to be picked up, and try and address them as we go. And hopefully, if we do it well, we'll also have a little bit of time at the end to pick up on questions. So let's move on and see how we go. So if we go to the slide 3, which is just giving a little bit of context about the Open Network project and where queue management sits. So the slide is just showing a diagram with the different elements of the Open Network program for 2020. There are 6 different work streams, going from sort of 1A, 1B through to work stream 5. Those work streams include work stream 2, which covers customer information provision and connections. And the work that we're doing on queue management sits within work stream 2. And as I said, that work is led by Peter Turner. So Peter has a team or a group which is sort of drawn from various network companies to help support him sort of pull together the program of work that we have for queue management this year, and that is overseen at work stream 2 and is discussed with our Open Networks Advisory Group from time to time, and also WebExes and webinars like this. So the other products, just for information under workstream 2, are interactivity of connection applications and getting some approaches agreed for how we deal with those across transmission and distribution companies, including IDNOs, and also work on what we call the system-wide resource register, which is sort of building into the well, from July. We're now, DNOs are now publishing that, and from July, it's likely that that will become the what's called the embedded capacity register, which is an output of the DCUSA modifications, which is ongoing at the moment. So we've got a couple of other sort of fairly meaty products under workstream 2 as well. But obviously, we're focusing on the queue management for today. So if there are no questions, we'll move on to the next slide, and Peter will start to pick it up.
Great, thank you, John. Good morning, Peter Turner, Northern Power Grid, and chairperson of the queue management group. I shall jump straight in, just give you a bit of an idea of the layout of that slide. On the right hand side, you've got a very simple table which illustrates a queue. So the queue position is based on the acceptance date, column 1. We've just called these projects, you know, A to H. And then you can see a capacity and a connection date. Now, one of the key things to bear in mind here is customers A to D have accepted, well, everybody in that queue has accepted a connection offer, right? So A to D do not require reinforcement to connect. They will require other assets, you know, extension assets, and customers E to H, they accepted quotes with a reinforcement element in it, right? So just covering off the bullets on the left. So queue management, it's the process used to manage network capacity after it's been allocated to customers when they accept their connection offer. So all of queue management happens between acceptance and, if I say energization, it would actually be project completion, right? And the idea is that QM, if I can refer to it that way, it just enables that fair and effective use of the available capacity, because without a QM policy, if a project didn't progress, just taking one of them at random, say it was project C, that capacity isn't available to other customers who are ready to proceed. So Ofgem and BEIS produced something called the Smart Systems and Flexibility Plan, and it actioned network companies, and the term network companies, you'll see we tend to use it, especially in the guide, we use the term network company because it means a DNO, an IDNO, you know, a transmission company. It's the generic term. So as I say, it actioned network companies to manage network connections more effectively as well for flexible assets such as battery storage. Later on in the slides, we've got a slide where John's going to cover that off. So obviously, with more ambitious, you know, net zero targets, it's even more important that capacity is effectively utilised. So if we just go to slide 5, please. So bearing in mind, and I should have said this on the previous slide, queue management exists today, right? You could, if you wished, you could follow this call. You could go onto the ANA website, and there is a document which has been there for a number of years. I'll say 2016 off the top of my head, and it's something like the fair and effective management of milestones. So it exists now, right? So what we've been doing is we've taken the existing process and we're trying to apply a more consistent approach across transmission and distribution. So reducing any differences in approaches as much as we can. And as indicated previously, allowing for projects to be moved in the queues by measuring progress against a set of milestones. So as I say, the milestones exist now, and what we did was we reviewed them, and we added a milestone, and the user guide indicates in the main body of the text, it gives you a brief summary of the milestones, indicates which one's the new one, and then they're also covered off in a bit more detail in the appendix. So that diagram at the bottom, it just represents sort of a hypothetical acceptance to project construction. So as you go along, OA means offer acceptance. So say 2 months after offer acceptance, the customer's initiated planning, secured land rights, 12 months after acceptance, they could have secured planning permission and so on. So now milestones that are agreed with the customer. So you would agree these with the customer, and that's how they're laid out. So if we go to slide 6, please. Now, very important this bit, I think, because the current QM process is, in a way, it's quite binary, right? If you fail your milestone, that's it, So what the group decided was they could do with being a bit of, I don't want to use the term flexibility because it means different things if you're network operator, but it is flexibility, a bit of tolerance. So the idea is, rather than it just being you've either achieved your milestone or failed it, there's a level where it's at risk. So work in progress, exactly like it sounds, the project's proceeding, perfectly satisfactorily. And then you've got at risk. That's when the project's position in the queue could be changed because there could be into the tolerance. And then termination is where the connection offer's terminated, right? And that customer moves down the queue. So the table at the bottom, I won't go through all of it, but if I just go down column 2, so it's a table that you read downwards, not left to right, if you see what I mean. So you've got work in progress. Now the milestones are currently in months. Sorry, they're in months. So what we also thought was we'd put them into working days as well, because it might add a bit more clarity. So if you're on any one of those milestones, if you are within the 3 months for LVHV, that's fine, right? Now then, let's say you started going over that 3 months, your project's now at risk, and it's at risk for another 3 months. But the idea of the 3 months is would basically be having a conversation with you, what's the issue? This is the issue. Well, look, you've got 3 months to get that back on track, and then you know whether or not that was achievable. And then, as you see there, where it says approximately 7 months, so once you've gone over the 0 to 6 months, that's when your project would be terminated. So the connection offer would be cancelled. You go at the end of the queue. I'm conscious on the right-hand side there's questions here.
Hi Peter, it's John. If I just chip in there, yeah, we do have. It looks as if we do have 3 questions. So maybe we'll try and pick those up if you feel you've covered that slide out.
Yeah. If we could pick them up now.
Okay, so let me coordinate. So Martin was asking if we'll be sharing the slides. Yeah, we will be, and Rashmi's sort of picked that up. Andrew, is any data on project queues available to view for a given area? So Peter, is that one that you can sort of?
Yes. We are looking. We call it, the group calls it the size of the prize, and Ofgem quite rightly have asked network operators to look at what the queue situation is like. So one of the things we are looking at is the level of spare capacity at some of the bulk supply points. Because if you didn't have a lot of spare capacity at a bulk supply point, available capacity, that's the situation where it's highly likely, if you start connecting more customers, you'd need to do reinforcement. You know? So don't get me wrong, queue management isn't just about, you know, avoiding reinforcement. It's definitely not that. But if you think of it in terms of managing your available capacity, then the ultimate action is you'd have to reinforce to create more. So we're working on that at the minute. Each network operator is sort of looking at things like heat maps, which are available on all our DNO websites. There's also something in one of the other workstream products called.
Let me pick that up. So we're sort of doing work within the queue management product team at the moment, looking at the queues and what the likely release of capacity might be. So that's sort of ongoing work. In terms, if Andrew's questions about what's more sort of publicly available, in one of the other products which I mentioned, the system-wide resource register, we haven't published it yet, but in the July release of that register, there will be some additional fields which are added, which identify reinforcements that are needed for particular resources that are contracted or accepted to connect to a network. And there will also be a field in the register which will indicate whether that particular resource is sitting in a connection queue or not. So the information will become available in July as to which resources are in queues and which reinforcements are required to be completed to connect those reinforcements. So I think that should help a bit. So hopefully that picks up Andrew's question. Ollie has asked a question in terms of what evidence is required to satisfy Milestone. So I know, Peter, we go into some detail in the process guide itself in terms of giving details of the evidence.
I can cover that off, John, because I was just getting the user guide up on my laptop here. So where am I on this? So I'm on. I don't expect you to follow us, but it's on page 6, and it summarises all the milestones. I'll just read what we've put in for milestone 1.
So I think Dan is probably going to switch across just to. We have the document ready that we can cut across to.
Excellent, Dan. Excellent.
Putting Dan on the spot.
Great, spot on. Yeah, just leave that there, Dan. So I was just doing number 1. I'll do number 3 simply because it's at the top of the page there. So you'll notice it says existing milestone. So existing milestone 3. That's like a milestone that exists today. And then on that same page, you'll see new milestone 6 is one called project commitment. So that's what I was saying earlier, that we'll create some new ones. But just quickly going through milestone 3. So each milestone has a time scale, so that's 2 months from offer acceptance. And then the evidence, the customer will provide, paperwork to demonstrate that, and this is land rights, so that the owner or lessee of the land, now these are all ORs, which is worth noting, they've entered into agreement to lease the land, they have an option to purchase or lease the land, or they've entered into some exclusivity agreement in relation to that land. So basically, in terms of land rights, the evidence for that is that the project is capable of proceeding because you've got the right to do the work on that land, be it you own it or you lease it. Hopefully that answers that one. I'm just looking there, Andrew Turner. cousin called Andrew Turner.
So I think this is Andrew's question. I think, yeah, transparency around the queues. I think this is, and yeah, we'll send you around we'll send around a link to the system-wide resource registers at the moment. You can link to those off the Open Networks pages on ENA. It won't be until sort of mid-July. Yeah, okay, fine.
The heat map data is there, so all DNOs have heat map data. So great. So just going on to slide 7. I'm conscious of trying to keep to time. Right, now then, this is, you'll see this style of diagram. It was the sort of just a hypothetical, you know, the left-hand side is offer acceptance, you know, and as you can see, the right-hand side goes up to sort of 12 to 24 months, right? So what this is, and obviously we've summarized this for the purposes of the webinar, but there's a lot more detail in the user guide. So that's the same table I went through earlier, and what this is demonstrating is, right, you can add, if a customer is failing against the milestones, those time periods can accumulate, right? So you've got there that securing land rights, which is the red circle, right, ends up being achieved with a 3-month delay, which is the sort of, if I call it yellow, it looks like yellowy orange on my screen. So you'll see there, it says underneath 3M delay, 3 months delay. So it's incurred a 3-month delay there, right? And as you see, going along to the 4th circle, the red one, you see SPP, Secure Planning Permission, right? That's also accumulated a delay, right? So as you see on the text on just the right-hand side there, so your securing planning permission had a 9-month delay, and then securing your land rights had a 3-month delay. So they add together, that's a 12-month delay. Now, that would mean that if that project was LV or HV, it's project termination. If it was EHV and 132, that's it's greater than the 6 months, right? But it's greater than the 12 months because you've got the 6 for the work in progress, sorry, and the 6 for the at risk. So I was going to say 12 is less than 14, which sounds daft, but you know what I mean. So it's in the at risk category. Now, as you go up to grid voltages, that's still classed as work in progress. But the key point to bear in mind, though, is securing the planning permission was a 9-month delay. Securing the land rights was 3. Because they are separate and they accumulate, it's a cumulative delay of 12 months. Go to slide 8, please. Right, now then, what the group also decided was that, yes, it sounds logical that some delays are going to be cumulative, you know, your 9 and your 3. But we thought to ourselves, well, sometimes, right, the milestones might be concurrent such that you don't add them together, right? So we've just done another sort of simple example there, and you can see part of that sort of timeline, right? So they've initiated planning permission, and then they've gone about securing the land rights. So in that example, each of them had a 4-month delay, but we could consider them being concurrent delays. So it's still 4. So it's they if I say they run in parallel. So you can see the table there, you know, it's at risk LVHV because it's greater than 3 and so on. If we could just go to slide 9, please. Right, now then. So I've sort of touched on this on the way through, but it's just to sort of emphasize the point. So that some of the consequences of queue management. So a project with at-risk status basically risks me moving down the queue, and just to be absolutely clear, to the end of the queue, if it's blocking capacity that another project could utilize, right? So the consequences is that there could be delays, because if you remember that first slide, which I spent a bit of time on about that, the red reinforcement barrier, they're going to go over that reinforcement barrier and incur reinforcement costs, and there's a time associated with incurring reinforcement costs, and there could be increased securities and liabilities if the connection impacts on grid. So again, if the project status is termination, then the project connection agreement, connection offer would be terminated, and then that network capacity made available to other projects. Just to be absolutely clear, we have confirmed to Ofgem we aren't making any plans to change the current appeal process. So for a DNO, the sort of high-level appeal process is, say it was me, Northern Power Grid, and I'm going to do this, and you thought you had grounds for a complaint. What we want you to do is want you to come and talk to us first, right? Come and talk to us. Let's see if we can sort it out. If we can't, you can still go to the ombudsman or Ofgem as appropriate, you know. So we're keeping that exactly the same. It's slightly different in, well, it is different in Cusk, but there is a process there, so we're not changing that. So slide 10, please. Now another sort of trying to recognise areas of sort of flexibility. And when we had a briefing with BEIS and Ofgem, some of their staff also asked this question: issues out with a customer's control, outside that control, you know. So yeah, you're going to fail against your milestones, but it's not your fault, you know. It isn't that you forgot to order some plant or whatever, you know. So we just did some indicative ones. So force majeure, that's a pretty standard sort of clause in contracts. There could be planning appeals and third-party challenges. If there was a delay caused by the network company, so if the delay is my fault, that's outside your control, you know. And then what we've said is that rather than try and write a really prescriptive list of everything that we could think of, we thought, well, give some ideas so people think, right, I understand what this outside the control means, and then basically you have the chance to come and discuss the specific details of the delay with the relevant network company and provide reasonable evidence to justify that specific delay, you know. So you might have a letter from the plant manufacturer saying it's going to be 4 months delayed, but at least you've got some sort of evidence. You get what I mean? So so I think we'll go to slide 11, John, and then I pass back to you.
Well, we've got a question. We picked up a question from Matthew, Peter.
Right. It's off the bottom of my screen.
Yeah, which we'll just pick up on at this point, if that's okay.
Yes, sorry.
Yes. It actually relates to not the last slide you did, but the previous slide. So Matthew's saying if you have fixed securities and your contract is terminated for breaching timelines, so I guess you go over the tolerance, then would you remain on the original fixed securities or get an updated profile based on the new reinforcement requirements? So that might, I guess, have different answers at distribution and transmission. So I'll let you and maybe Rashmi just pick up on that.
Yeah, do you want to chip in there, Rashmi? Because securities is probably more grid oriented. Are you on mute, Rashmi?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, now fire away.
Okay, so all these things are listed detailed in our guide. So if you have elected to fix the attributable liability in accordance with section 15, then it would be appropriate for the project moving upward in the queue will be given to unfix their security and liabilities as well. So it's like they will be unfixed. If the fixed securities are there, then they have to be unfixed and recalculated all the reinforcement when they are moving downwards. And then if you are moving upwards, then it's the same thing. So unfix the liabilities and they don't need to pay the reinforcement work. Hope it's clear.
So we're imagining there are two parties would be affected, one moving down the queue and one moving up the queue, and the effects would be different for them. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So in Matthew's case, if your contract is terminated, or I guess you were moved down the queue, then your securities would change. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think that's all the questions we've got for the moment. So I'll pick up again then, and we're on a slide now, which just sort of moves us to another angle really of the queue management work, which is about flexible resources. So Peter has talked a bit about the detail of milestones and cumulative delay and tolerances and how that will work for the all of the parties really that are in connection queues. What this aspect covers is how flexible resources in queues might be used better, and it sort of follows from some of you will know this, I guess, but follows from the work that Ofgem and BES did. Did I see Andy has just come through with the question, but we're using the Q&A for questions, Andy, if you can find that on WebEx. It's usually under the three dots thing. So, sorry, back to flexible resources. Yeah, the smart grid, the smart systems and flexibility plan that BES and Ofgem produced a few years ago highlighted that network companies and others should be doing things really to help the connection of flexible resources, and Action 1.6 included some work really to look at how flexible resources could be connected more effectively or more quickly, and that has been built into the queue management work that has been done over the last year or so, and is recognised in the draft guide that is published. So what you'll see in the guide is a section that just picks up. It's not a particularly long section, but it picks up on the flexible resources aspect. And essentially, network companies are undertaking to, going forward, when the guide is published, to look at opportunities to use flexible resources. And you'll see that on the right-hand side here, there's an example, a sort of before and after queue. The before sort of table at the top, you can see that three of the projects, E, F, and G, are sort of sitting behind a network reinforcement that needs to be completed. One of those projects, Project F, happens to be something which can offer flexibility. So maybe it's a storage project, what then happens really is if Project F is minded to really, that they can have that sort of exchange, that discussion with the network company, and really look at the possibility for whether it can perhaps connect a little bit earlier, or connect in such a way that it can benefit the constraint and other parties who happen to be caught behind the need for reinforcement. So you can see in this particular case, the after case is that Project F, because it can offer that flexibility, it's enabled Project G, which is of a similar capacity. It's a fairly simple example, to also connect a little bit earlier without the need to complete the reinforcement. Now, there will be conditions around this, and the guide sort of starts to pick out, there will be a need for some sort of contractual arrangement between the network company and the flexible resource to cover that, because obviously they will be relying on the flexible resource to act in a particular way at particular times. But in principle, the network companies and developers of flexible resources, there is a route open for them to start to look at those possibilities. So just the final bullet point there on the left-hand side of that slide, as well as the user guide, which is being published and finalized, we're also thinking a bit more within Peter's team about how we implement this at a DNO level, and there'll be a sort of further, it won't be a big piece, but a sort of implementation plan will be published in September. That'll be that'll pick up on whatever feedback we've got from this consultation, obviously, and other ideas, but it'll start to indicate how that routes in which that those flexible resources might be used, and ideas from DNOs on that. So that's the use of flexible resources. It's an important part. It's picking up on the Smart Systems and Flexibility Plan, and yeah, we've got our fingers crossed that there will be some opportunities, and some parties will come forward to try that out.
Just to chip in there, John, if I may, on that example there, if you look at the before picture, so Project F is 6th in the queue now, and the guide explains this in more detail. Obviously, Project F moves up the queue, and because if you think of all of them except F are generators, right? But F could be battery storage, which has an import requirement, right? So it sort of uses up some of that excess capacity and creates a little bit of headroom, right? So in reality, F's 30, Project A is 50. Project A would be offered, sort of given first refusal, to join F in moving up the queue. But it will be a case of, look, do you want to create a connection for 30 MVA, or do you want to stick to the original 50? Now, in that simple example, Project A decided, no, I want me 50. So that's why G got offered the next slot. I'm just looking at John Martin's asked a question.
Yeah.
In cases where a developer is delayed and is progressing the action but is struggling with the action, how do DNOs assure consistent action? I think this is, to my mind, there's sort of two things to consider here. One, when we did indicate the issues outside the customer's control, it's difficult, if not impossible, to come up with a full list. And I'd be conscious that if we came up with, say, 10 bullets on that page, right, as this thing gets rolled out and you get more experience with it and all that, you're going to come up with an 11 and a 12, So it may be, it's a bit like the connection charging methodology, every now and then customer will come up with something, could you be clearer on this, or Ofgem might ask us to do a certain thing, like we've just updated interactive network management. So the point being, they're revolving documents. I'm also conscious that one of the main drivers on a lot of open networks is a consistent approach. It's one of the main drivers. I don't think you'll ever get it fully consistent, because you've got different situations and different DNOs. Like our northeast patch and our Yorkshire patch, face different issues. Our northeast patch has 20 kV in it, as an example, and the Yorkshire one doesn't. So.
Yeah, there will be. I think just to pick up on maybe one of Martin's, I think it is something we've recognised with queue management, and I know, Peter, you mentioned that there are milestones in place at the moment, and in theory some of this happens, and I think we would put our hands up and say that different network companies have approached this in slightly different ways, and there has been a level of inconsistency maybe in the way that they have dealt with customers, through those local approaches, whatever. So part of what we're trying to do here is to try and drive that greater consistency, and we've settled on a level of detail in the process guide to help with that, but maybe we do need to be more prescriptive in some places. So if that feedback comes back, we'll certainly take that into consideration and reflect on it. Yeah. There are some other questions there as well. We're getting a few through. Fernando, is there a way to quantify the avoidance of securities and liabilities associated with reinforcement resulting from flexibility? How can this value be partially transferable to the flexible resource? So yeah, that's. I don't think we've thought through that one in detail, but that's a great thing for us to think a bit more about. I don't know, Peter or Rashmi, whether you would add anything to that.
Not off the top of my head. It's a very good question, and I'm assuming it's talking about when the flexible resource moves up the queue. If they move up the queue, which is the example there, that you've indicated, John.
Yeah.
They won't. I've got to be clear here. By moving up the queue, they won't incur reinforcement costs to just move up that queue, right? But at some point, that reinforcement work still needs to be done, right? You sort of offset it or you delay it, but you don't cancel it at all. So there may well be some security and liability associated with it.
I think we probably need to look at a few more examples and sort of play through some of the possibilities there. But I suspect it will be different case to case, and no two examples will be quite the same. But we'll.
Yeah, I noticed Ollie as well. Very good question. Are the current local flexibility tender requirements slightly problematic for this new process? E.g., WPD, Flex Power. Each asset must be built and energised or have a connection agreement. Good question, and I feel as if I've been saying this a lot, but we do cover it in the guide. We did try and think of all of the what's a customer. It isn't simply like a guide and a consistent approach. We're trying to think, right, what's the customer going to open this document and look for? So what we realised was, if that flexibility is battery storage, right, in a way, you've got two options, right? For that particular part of the network, there could be an existing flexible resource, which it may be more cost effective to have a discussion with them, right? But if there wasn't an existing flexible resource and you've got that in the queue, right? What we've basically said in the guide that for this project, we aren't looking at sort of what the contract would look like and what the market mechanisms are, right? It is an action that needs to be done, but our group isn't tasked with that. But we did recognise that post acceptance, when you start having a discussion with that flexible resource, you're going to have to be contractually bound. They're going to have to be contractually bound to alleviate the constraint that you've got. So, and there is time to do that. You know, if you've got a project like a large project with 24 months delivery, you know, in theory that gives you more time to have that discussion with a flexible resource. You know, so there is some additional information in the guide, and by all means have a look, and then come back to us on it. I'm just looking at it.
Okay, so there's a further comment from Martin there about dealing with consistency and maybe some concerns about allowing one project to progress and another to terminate, I guess, if in what appear to be similar circumstances. So we'll certainly try and...
Yeah. The other good thing is, just to chip in there, John, apologies. The other thing, like if you were, say, a generation company who spanned the sort of UK, right? You'd have experience of, say, NPG, ANW, WPD. I've just plucked 3 names out there, you know. So if there was a lack of consistent approach, we've got something called the DER forum, the Distributed Energy Resources Forum. So as an example, you know, you could chip something into that forum and say, look, you know, you do this in one area and you do this in another area, and there could be a discussion there, and then ultimately that there's that appeals process if you felt you were you know, not getting the appropriate satisfaction. So those would be a couple of options where you could raise it, and it is that forum isn't just network operators, that are generation companies and solar companies and trade associations who've joined that. So
okay,
the mechanism to raise it is my point.
Got my eye on time. We've got a few more questions, which
fire away.
We might need to go fairly quick. We've got a couple of slides left, which will take a few minutes. I'd like to leave a few minutes for those. But Amir is asking, I think in terms of the flexible resources case, the after case, if in the after case the project F has moved up with an associated reinforcement, if that reinforcement facilitates other projects then lower on the queue, is there any consideration to move those projects which benefit from that? So I think in that case, the project F would move up, but it wouldn't require the reinforcement to be completed for it to start to operate. If I understand that correctly. It would, in the example we're showing, it would have the benefit of being able to bring sort of project G with it in that case without the need for reinforcement, albeit there would be some.
Sorry, John, just to chip in there, if I get Amir's point correct here. Now, when F moves up that queue, right, it moves up to a position where it doesn't immediately need the reinforcement, because it's performing rather than sort of, if you think of it, rather than performing the function of a normal battery storage plant, it's moving up the queue, getting a quicker connection, but it's alleviating a specific constraint. Right? Ultimately, the reinforcement still has to be done. If that reinforcement facilitates other projects, right? So if I change your words around, Amir, if F was, we'll keep F at 30, right? But say E and G were 15 each, then subject to the designer having a look and making sure it's going to work and all that, in theory, 2 people could move up that queue. because what they do is they delay / offset the immediate need for reinforcement, but it still needs to happen. So, sorry, John, I'll just.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We've got a person. I think you've covered that. So Matthew's asking, does queue management apply to developers that have already constructed their site and are not using their full tech? Does this tech become available for other developers to use ahead of reinforcement? So I think there's a sort of broader question there, I think, Matthew, in terms of will we apply queue management in this new sense to existing contracts? And I think that's going to be difficult. It's something we will think about, but typically it's very hard to be retrospective about these things. But it's something that we are sort of weighing up for the CUSC mod in particular. And Amir has another question about what will happen to the current Pathfinder projects like ESO's Pathfinder. For example, if a Flex provider wins ESO tenders, and how will it be assessed against other Flex projects on the queue? Will they benefit from a fast track route? So I think that's probably a question for the ESO and the transmission companies. And I think that I don't know, Rashmi, whether any thought has been given to that as yet.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. But I will take that question away, and it's a good question. So I need to emphasize the fact that I need to give you proper information on that. So I will come back to you after the webinar if that helps.
Yes,
thank you.
That's super. Thanks, Rashmi. Okay. So Dan, there's a couple of slides left. We'll just cover those off, and then we'll see if we've got a minute or two at the end. Thanks. You go to the next slide. So this is a sort of next step slide. So the things that we'll be doing sort of going forward, we'll update, and we aim to publish the user guide sort of August time, all being well. And then what network companies will start to do is to start to use the updated milestones in their connection contracts before we can sort of start to do the queue management bit in anger, as it were. That is move parties up queues and down queues. That there will need to be code changes. CUSC and DACUSA, and those will need to be proposed and agreed. So we're in the process of pulling together proposals for CUSC and DACUSA and probably the STC as well. And clearly there will be an amount of time that those will take. So probably the best case in our sense of using queue management in anger and using it in the way that we envisage in the guide is probably middle of 2021, once those processes have gone through, if they go through reasonably smoothly. And the other thing which I've already mentioned that we're going to be doing is just in September, just publishing a little bit of an implementation plan, which will do things like lay out the timescale for the code processes, how the DNOs are approaching the use of flexible resources, that thing in a little bit more detail, so that people can so if we just move to the final slide, then I'll pick up a question which Andy Borden has sent through. Final slide here is really just saying you can see the guide and the queue management consultation document at that link on that Open Networks page. The consultation document is very simple, very straightforward. It's just saying how to read the guide, really, laying out a little bit of context, how to read the guide, and then, as I was saying before, just feedback. If you've got thoughts or ideas or points that you think need to be made a bit more clearly, then just put them in an email and send them back to that address. We'd like to get stuff back by 24th of June so that we can sort of push on and sort of meet our timescales this year. And that's about it. I think just to pick up on Andy's question, which hasn't come via Q&A, it's come via the chat function. So we've got a question: what happens if milestones are amended by the modification application process? I'm guessing there that probably means do things get reset? Is there a sort of reset of milestones and cumulative delay, that sort of thing? So I don't know, Peter, whether you want to.
Yes. Very good question. Very good question. Now, you've got two mods. You've got the CUSC mod, and then you've got the diffuser mod, or if I call it the common connection charging methodology mod, which I've actually started drafting because I'm on a different group with some other D&O colleagues, and we sort of manage charging methodology, ultimately Ofgem approve or allow or disallow any change. But the way I'm drafting the words, and obviously it's got to go to one of my colleagues, Brian Hoy, who's also very knowledgeable of this. My name's going to sort of kick it around a bit, and then it'll go to the queue management group, right? And then the diffuser process will also set up a subgroup, because it must, because it's classed as a part one matter. So there'll be another group looks at whatever words we come up with. So there is a sort of a process to go through. Now then, I wasn't planning on writing out the full list of milestones. Now, the aim is, if I'm going to move somebody in the queue, right, how can I make that sort of legally and regulatory sound, you know? So my thought is, I say my thought, our thought, if I put something in the methodology which just explained queue management, not as simple as what I'm going to say, but basically the key points I think are, look, if you fail the milestones and some tolerances, if you move down the queue, your connection charge is likely to go up because you'd incur reinforcement. If somebody else moves up the queue, they'll end up with a lower connection charge. In terms of the methodology, that's the point I'm trying to get across. So I wouldn't be putting them milestones in, but they will exist on the ANA's website. I hope I've answered that. But by all means, feed that question in as part of the consultation, and we're going to look at it.
Yeah, I think just to add a point to that, I guess if just thinking about an example, if you know, if we have an existing connection agreement in place and that mod apps, I guess that could be an opportunity to reset milestones and to bring that project sort of under the queue management, you know, subject to the code changes being agreed in the appropriate code changes, you know, be it cost code or TUSA, depending on the connection voltage. But I think that is another aspect. So I think we've gone beyond 11 o'clock. So I don't think we've got any more questions, unless I don't know, Dan, if you've been monitoring, or Peter or Rashmi, you've seen anything else. But I think if it appears to me that we're sort of done on questions, I would say thank you very much for the questions that you've got. They're all going to be sort of thought about, you know, as we take it forward. So and please, you know, if you think of more, sort of email them in, and obviously comments very welcome for the final guide that we'll produce in a couple of months' time.
Yes.
Okay, so that's, thank you very much from me, and I guess from Peter and Rashmi.
Yeah, I would echo that, John. Thank you everybody for attending today.